Governance expert Professor Gorky Jain hails Faye's leadership style but blames some of his cabinet members who often make regretful declarations against past officials under Macky Sall's regime. Professor Jain, however, shares his expectations.
We believe that they will be mature enough to live up to the expectations of the people, that is to say, laying the emphasis on what should be done to help people rather than insisting on opposition attitude. If the president believes in himself, because he's the one who got chosen by the Senegalese people, no matter who is maybe more popular than he is, but what is important to understand for him is that he is the president of Senegal. Take his responsibility and do what is right instead of letting some other people behave as if they were the leaders.
President Bassirou Diomaye Faye appears to appeal to the regional and international space owing to his nomination as a facilitator in the crisis between ECOWAS and Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger. At the home front, though, issues such as the increasing irregular migration trend continue.
Abdullahi Hassan with that report. In Guinea-Bissau, the opposition political parties and several political players are divided over the new legislative election date announced by President Umaro Sissoco Embalo. Days ago, President Embalo declared November 24 as the date for the parliamentary elections after dissolving the National Assembly twice in 18 months. The previous assembly, elected in December last year and controlled by the opposition, was dissolved when the president alleged a coup. The majority coalition, which claimed victory in the June 2023 elections, opposed the dissolution and called for new elections. Alan Yaro Embalo, a Bissau-Guinean journalist, joins us now with some details.
There's two parts of the reactions. One is just agreed with this decision of the president to just have a date fixed for the forthcoming parliamentary election. The second one is those who refuse to go in that way by the fact that the parliamentary election has been organized just a few months ago. It was December last year, and less than 1 year, this parliament has been dissolved, putting the country in the political crisis. And for them to organize an election requires some just expenditures, and this country is very poor and don't have enough money to just organize elections in the time of 6 months or to prepare another elections less than 1 year. This is the main problem. So one country who is not able to organize by itself his own elections is a matter of burning concern. So we are waiting to see what the president will say, because he's now in China for a state visit. But when he comes back, for sure, he will just meet the different leaders of political parties to just discuss about this issue.
Alan Yaro Mbalo is a journalist in Guinea-Bissau. Let's take you to the Republic of Guinea, where commercial activities and vehicular movement in a suburb of Conakry came to a standstill due to a protest by a group of young people. The demonstration in the Hamadale Bambeto area on Tuesday was against the lack of electricity supply in their neighborhoods. The protest, which lasted for several hours, led to intense clashes between the state police and the demonstrators. Eche Atisu has more.
The protest on Tuesday was intense following a violent confrontation between the protesters and law enforcement officers who were forced to disperse the protesters using tear gas. Despite the heavy presence of police forces, the young protesters dumped garbage on the road, bent ties and set up barricades. The violence brought commercial activities and vehicular movement to a halt in the neighborhoods of Hamdalai and Bambeto. Guinean soldiers were also seen at the station near the Crusher Crossroads close to Bambeto. However, calm was eventually restored after several hours of confrontation between the police forces and protesters. The lack of electricity in the Hamdalai-Bambeto axis has been attributed to a technical fault on the high voltage line, which the authorities have yet to address. Meanwhile, Guinea has, since the oil depot explosion last year, suffered from insufficient gas supply for both domestic and industrial purposes, even after Conakry signed agreements with Senegal and Cote d'Ivoire.
Eche Atisu fight that report.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Elsewhere, the United States military has withdrawn its troops from the air base in the Nigerian capital, Niamey. This marks the first step in the U.S. withdrawal from the country following the denunciation of the military agreement between Niger and the United States. The American Army handed over the 101 air base over the weekend in the presence of the Chief of Staff of the Nigerian Army, Maman Saninkou, despite a departure deadline planned for September 15. Rose Samarakates has more in the following report.
In a joint statement by the Nigerian Minister of Defense and the U.S. Department of State announced that the withdrawal of American forces and equipments from the Niamey-based 101 is now completed. The U.S. presence in Niamey has stood at around 950 troops and 766 soldiers have left Niger since the military ordered their departure. A final flight carrying U.S. troops left Niamey late on Sunday. The departure ceremony of the 101 base was attended by Niger's Army Chief of Staff, Maman Saninkou, and the U.S. General Kenneth Ekman. Niger's military leaders scrapped an army cooperation deal with Washington in March after the July 26 coup that toppled President Mohamed Bazoum. The United States had around 650 soldiers in Niger as part of the cooperation to support anti-jihadist campaign in the Sahel region, including a major drone base in Agadez. Niger has already ordered the withdrawal of troops from France, the former colonial power and traditional security ally, and proceeded to strengthening ties with Russia, which had provided instructors and equipment. Last weekend, Germany's defense minister also said it would end operations at its air base in Niger by August 31st, following the breakdown of talks with military rulers in Niamey.
Rose Samarakates reporting there. Away from Niger, President Bola Tinubu of Nigeria has established a new ministry to address the long-standing conflict between farmers and herders in the country. The Ministry of Livestock Development was announced during the inauguration of the Presidential Committee on Livestock Reforms at the State House in Abuja. The federal institution aims to end years of violence that has claimed hundreds of lives. But as WDR's Usma Umar reports, this decision has sparked mixed reactions among the population who are calling for a court in the cost of governance.
The committee, which will be chaired by President Bola Tinubu, is tasked with proposing recommendations to foster peaceful coexistence between herders and farmers, ensure security and economic well-being, and address the root causes of the conflict. The Nigerian leader expressed optimism that the new ministry would resolve the lingering impasse, saying the solution is here. The committee, which includes former chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, Attahiru Jega, as deputy chairman, comes to life 10 months after the president approves its establishment to boost livestock and dairy industries. Reacting to the development, however, the executive director of Corporate Accountability and Public Participation Africa, CAPA, Mr. Akimbode Oluwafemi, says good as it sounds, it goes against the government's resolve to cut cost of governance.
Videos have been circulating of cattle eating up people's crops in Kogi State, in those states and the rest of them. And it's like the stage is set for another round of header farmers crisis. So we truly need a strong initiative to resolve this problem permanently. However, creating a complete ministry to tackle this problem is something that I find it so difficult to justify.
Also speaking, Obinna Oduche, a public affairs analyst, says the task does not need a whole ministry.
It will take them 1 year to set it up. And within that 1 year, we are already suffering. So the issue is not window dressing. I think Nigeria has gotten to a level that if we don't get it right, Nigeria will stay.
Comments by Nigerians monitored from social media platforms are overwhelmingly against the latest move by the government. However, Nigeria, a nation characterized by pastoral farming and fishing communities, among others, has for decades suffered material damage and loss of lives due to conflicts between farmers and herders, fueled by restricted access to land, pasture and water. Previous government's efforts, including the controversial Rural Grazing Area Ruga initiative, failed to yield lasting solutions. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio,
Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
We remain in Nigeria over a related development as the government has announced a 150-day duty-free import window for agricultural products to address the rising inflation of food items. According to Nigeria's Minister of Agriculture and Food Security, Abubakar Kari, the duty-free imports will be for products such as maize, brown rice, wheat and cowpea. The minister explained that the initiative would enable the Nigerian government to import 250,000 tons of wheat and 250,000 tons of maize. The imported food products in a semi-processed state are intended to supply the country's small processors and millers. Despite facing a surge in food price hike in 2023, Nigeria spent $2.13 billion importing food items the same year. Efforts to boost local production to reduce dependence on food imports have been hampered by factors such as poor infrastructure, insecurity, and climate change. Liberian President Joseph Boakai is today, Wednesday, leading an array of government officials and international partners to launch a 6-year national agricultural development plan for Liberia. The government intends to invest $780 million into the National Agricultural Development Program, targeting the production of rice, maize, and vegetables in Liberia over the next 6 years. WADR's Darlington Pogba has been following NR reports.
Agriculture Minister Alexander Nota said today's launch will solicit funding towards agricultural development and also increase the production of important crops through intervention and maximizing returns to farmers. He said the National Agriculture Development Plans is crucial in driving the government's development agenda geared towards making Liberia food sufficient.
This plan also creates an opportunity for those in the private sector who want to invest in agriculture as a business, to find value chains of interest that they can invest in. And over the next 6 years, the government intends to spend about $718 million in the agriculture sector.
Meanwhile, ahead of today's launch, cassava farmers in Grand Bassa County are appealing to stakeholders to buttress the efforts of local farmers with modern tools to increase their harvests. David Poka is one of them.
The challenge we're facing now is that the processing of the cassava, how to transform it from the cassava now to gari and so on. That's a problem. So we really need grader to grade the cassava that the patching will be easier for us. Even if we are using the grader, the mountain are using the grader, the iron chop their hand off when the cassava slide off. So it's a very tedious job for us.
The launch is coming at a time when citizens, farmers, and stakeholders believe making Liberia food sufficient requires more investment from the government. For Newslink on West Africa Democrats Radio, I'm Darlington Pogba in Monrovia.
You are listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar. Here is a reminder of the top stories. Political and governance experts in Senegal called on President Diomaye Faye to ensure service delivery as he marks 100 days in office. Violent protest rocks Guinean capital Conakry over lack of electricity supply. Opposition parties and political players divided over new legislative date announced by Guinea-Bissau President Embalo. Still ahead, dozens of health professionals receive emergency response certificates in Dakar. We do have the press review, guest interview, and the sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Thanks for rejoining us. As a reminder, we are streaming live on YouTube at WADR and on Facebook, WADR English Service. Now, here in Senegal, the World Health Organization Region and Office for Africa officially handed over certificates to 60 trained experts of the Strengthening and Utilization of Emergency Response Groups, also known as the SEARCH Initiative. The ceremony, held at the Health Emergency Operations Center in Dakar, saw in attendance several health professionals and government officials. The event, in partnership with Global Affairs Canada, GAC, aimed to reaffirm the government's commitment to national and regional health security. As Oge Oberika reports, SEARCH is one of the 3 flagship programs by WHO Africa designed to improve the way African countries deal with health emergencies, from preparedness to detection and response.
To bridge the gap in countries' preparedness for health emergencies, the World Health Organization Regional Office for Africa introduced a Strengthening and Utilizing Response Group for Emergencies Surge initiative in each of the 47 countries in the WHO region. Dr. Jean-Marie Yamiogo, WHO representative for Senegal, says the initiative aims to ensure governments are better equipped to mobilize and respond to future public health emergencies.
We have put together all specialists, not pertaining only to epidemiology or health issues, but also specialists in the area of communication, especially in the area of social or in the area of religious and so on. The objective is to reinforce the capacity of all the countries to build the resilience of the health system in all countries in the African region. So far, we have 15 countries that have already just teams ready to intervene timely and also to intervene very efficiently.
Setting up a strong system for managing emergencies is the primary objective of the Surge initiative, which seeks to improve the efficiency of WHO staff, health professionals, partners, and disaster management agencies during a crisis. Ibrahim Cham is one of the trainees.
We learn a lot of things that can help us respond to all cases of emergency. Like me, I am specialist in risk communication and community engagement. And we receive formation, training to how to speak with communities in case of emergency, how to help them to face this emergency, and how to collaborate with the other member of the team.
Through this initiative, the WHO Africa team will forge and strengthen partnerships with other UN agencies, donors, state institutions, and other stakeholders to ensure health security by building strong emergency preparedness and response systems across the African continent.
Oge Oberika with that report.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
Let's join Sankule Janko in the Gambian capital Banjul for the newspaper review.
Hello there and welcome to this edition of the Press Review. Let's begin with the Fourier newspaper, whose lead story reads, ECOWAS urges Gambia to expedite adoption of new constitution, with the photo of President Tinubu of Nigeria, who also serves as the chairman of ECOWAS. President Barrow says Gambia secures over $3 billion to import essential food commodities. Still with the Fourier newspaper, this one reads, National Assembly Health Committee says enactment of nutrition bill strengthens nutrition security. Regional lawmakers recognize Gambia's constitutional independence to establish special tribunal. Let's move on to the Point newspaper. The lead story on the Point newspaper reads, fire disaster leaves dozens of madrasa students homeless. In the Gambia, Quranic schools are referred to as madrasas. Central Bank Governor reaffirms resolve to implement robust anti-money laundering. That's another story on the Point newspaper with the photo of the Central Bank Governor Boa Seydi. Witness reveals more stolen items of slain British lady. That's according to this report. Now let's move on to the final newspaper for today, and that is the Standard newspaper. And the lead story on the Standard newspaper reads, ECOWAS did not block Gambia Special Tribunal. That is according to Saliu Tal, the former president of the Gambia Bar Association, one of the proponents of the Special Tribunal of the Gambia. Remember, we had an exclusive interview with WADR as well with regard to ECOWAS Parliament's advice urging ECOWAS not to interfere. But as he said, that was just ECOWAS Parliament is just an advisory body and they do not have the legislative powers to prevent ECOWAS from taking a major part in the Gambia's Special Tribunal. Bangladeshi explorer who visited 143 countries reaches Gambia. 2 convicted of stealing phones, motorbike. That's another story on the Standard newspaper. And this one reads, campaigners tour country promoting TRRC recommendations. And finally, village district heads banned from charging fees for land transaction. I'm afraid these are the major stories making headlines on Gambian Dailies, and it's back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Sankule, for the newspaper review.
politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
For this segment, we take you back to the story about Senegalese President Diomaye Faye's first 100 days in office. Recall that he was sworn into office on April 2 after winning the presidential election on March 24 this year with 54% of the total vote cast. Upon assuming office, the Senegalese head of state promised genuine reconciliation and better leadership. However, Diomaye Faye's first 100 days performance has been put on the spotlight by Wadr regarding both positive and negative impacts of his governance. Professor Golgi Jen is a governance expert. He weighs in on the president's running of the state so far.
I believe that the president is on the whole doing well because he has visited almost all the neighboring countries. He has also visited the long-standing friend of Senegal, that is France. I think since his inauguration, the country has been, enjoying relative peace because from 2021 to 2024, that is the election, we had very difficult situations, and I think this is absolutely not positive. I don't know who is to praise for this. Am I praising the president for this, or am I praising the new opposition leaders who understand what a state is or should be and how the institutions have got to be respected?
All right, sir. What's about some negative aspects? Have you not noticed some negative effect on the part of the governance of President Diomaye Faye since he got into power the first 100 days?
Well, whenever there are positive aspects, there will be negative aspects. And what is important is that the positive aspects are more present than the negative ones. If there are negative aspects, maybe I would really blame them not on the president himself on the whole, but on some people on his side. Some ministers going out and then making regretful declarations, criticizing the former government in a rather unsuitable way, whereas those declarations are, to me, useless, because what is expected from the new leaders is not accusation, is not blaming people, because those people, they have already been sanctioned negatively by being rejected. So why keep on criticizing them? But there are some really leaders, including even high-ranking officials I would like to name here, going out and making declarations that are really very, very regretful. That is one thing. The other thing is there are also some, construction sites on the Atlantic coastline who have been stopped by the government because they believe that the land was not managed fairly by the former government. They are accusing people of having illegally given plots of land to their partners, to their supporters, and they believe that they have got to stop all the constructions along the coastline. And this has negative consequences on the population themselves, even those who do not have any land there.
What are your expectations going forward for the Diomaye Faye's administration?
I would really would love this new administration to succeed because that would be in the interest of Senegal. And we believe that they will be, mature enough to live up to the expectations of the people rather than insisting on opposition attitude. And I believe that if the president believes in himself, because he's the one who got elected, chosen by the Senegalese people, no matter what happened, no matter who is maybe more popular than he is, but what is important to understand for him is that he is the president of Senegal. Take his responsibility and do what is right instead of letting some other people behave as if they were the leaders.
Professor Golgi Jen is a governance expert. Now, in the world of sports, Lamine Yamal became the youngest goal scorer in the European Championship history as Spain beat France in an absorbing contest to reach the final of Euro 2024. Meanwhile, England will face the Netherlands this Wednesday night in the Euro semi-finals at 7 p.m. We've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mustafa Sek and Maudu for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via our social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram at WADR News, and on Facebook, WADR English Service. I am Augustine Cully. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.